Kasich is still focusing his time, energy, and money on New Hampshire. NBC4's Colleen Marshall is there now and has an exclusive look at Kasich on the campaign trail.
New Hampshire is the make or break state for John Kasich. He says, quite frankly, he has to perform well on Election Day. He's spending all of his time, all of his campaign resources here, and he is counting on the people of New Hampshire to put him on the next step toward the White House. First stop, Newberry, New Hampshire, a tiny town on Lake Sunapee where people take presidential politics and their role in it very seriously.
But this is it right here. This is town hall at its greatest.
The community center was standing room only, but 1 week out from the election, most people here are still undecided. What are you hoping to hear from him today?
I'm hoping to hear that he is someone who can bring the country back together and not be so divisive as most of the other candidates.
The first question, can Kasich prevail when his party is being pulled so far right and he wants to lead from the middle?
While this may be differentiating, it may not resonate with an increasingly absolutist electorate.
So my view is, as a conservative, conservatism is about opportunity. What is the best way to provide opportunity for people?
Kasich has logged thousands of miles here. His campaign won't survive unless New Hampshire voters help him rise at least to the top 3 on Election Day.
I believe this brand of conservatism, sir, is the real brand. Opportunity, growth, opportunity, everybody gets a chance to rise.
And the governor's final stop of the day will be in Plymouth, New Hampshire, where he's expecting once again a standing room crowd. We'll be live there tonight at 6. Colleen Marshall, NBC4, New Hampshire.
The presidential candidates are turning their attention to New Hampshire. The state will host the first primary in the nation. NBC4's Colleen Marshall is on the bus touring New Hampshire with Ohio Governor John Kasich.
This is what every day is like for John Kasich, going from small town to small town here in New Hampshire. He just got finished with his 90th town hall meeting. We're on our way to number 91 in Claremont. It's a rolling campaign headquarters that travels through hundreds of miles of picturesque New England countryside each day. But no one is looking out the windows, including John Kasich, who spends his time strategizing and talking to reporters. Donald Trump in this state of New Hampshire, where you have a lot of independent thinkers, is at 38% in some polls.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Are you troubled by that?
No, I don't think about Donald Trump. I think about me.
Before it carried the Kasich campaign, the bus was used by country stars Kenny Chesney and Lady Antebellum. It stops just long enough for Kasich to answer more reporter questions and try to connect with more voters. At 6, we'll be live at his final town hall meeting of the day. In New Hampshire, Colleen Marshall, NBC4.
The Iowa caucuses are over, and now the Republican and Democratic presidential candidates head to New Hampshire ahead of next week's primary. Ohio Governor John Kasich is already there among the candidates who are now crowding the Granite State. NBC4's Colleen Marshall is also there and has exclusive coverage of Kasich on the campaign trail tonight.
Now, this will be the third and final town hall meeting of the day for Governor Kasich, but it is the 93rd time he has done a town hall here in New Hampshire. His goal was to hit 100, and he will do that on Friday. This is a strategy for New Hampshire that he borrowed from John McCain, and just like McCain, he hopes it's going to take him to the top of the GOP ticket.
I particularly like the way he came in like a normal person. He was not wearing a suit. He didn't have a henchman with him.
This man and his wife are here to see John Kasich for the 3rd time and already know how they'll vote.
He seems like a real person who knows how to take charge.
He's not doing well in the polls.
I don't understand that. If people have seen him, I don't know why he wouldn't move up in the polls.
But most of the voters we talked to who came to see John Kasich are not committed, not even Republican. New Hampshire voters are proudly independent and stay non-committed until Election Day. What do you need to hear from him to convince you to vote for him?
I don't listen to any of these people. You know, my final thing, and I always tell my wife this, whoever gets into the White House is going to decide on the Supreme Court. And in my mind, that's the biggest deal going.
Voters grilled Kasich on why he wants to gut Obamacare.
And I would not be for any health care reform that I wouldn't put my family in.
He fielded questions on everything from Social Security to prison reform and whether or not he's conservative enough, knowing his answers could seal his political fate.
So whatever happens in this race, I'm going to be fine, because I've given it my best, and I know it's out of my hands at the end of the day. But it's in your hands that if I don't win, it's your fault, and I'm not going to forget it.
And Governor Kasich does know just how important the state of New Hampshire is to his political future. He told me today that he really does have to be one of the stories that come out of this state. It's one of the things I talked to him about. When we were on the bus with him, we were the only Columbus station to do that, go on the campaign bus. And we will have special reports on that coming up for you beginning this Thursday. In New Hampshire, Colleen Marshall, NBC4.
And we have
If you're a politician and your lips are moving, people assume you're lying.
But John Kasich says he's talking straight to voters in New Hampshire in a final push to win their votes on Tuesday. Governor Kasich just 5 days away from the most important election of his political career, New Hampshire's Republican presidential primary.
It will decide if he goes on or goes home. Kasich is on a ramped-up cross-state bus tour and is just a day away from his 100th town hall meeting. It's all about the road trip for the Kasich campaign, and I was the only Central Ohio reporter invited to join the governor on the bus for the ride of his life. This is how the Kasich campaign begins and ends every single day, on a bus, rolling down a New Hampshire roadway. I joined the governor early in the morning, but his day started hours earlier.
It's tough, but it's not that hard. I mean, I sleep well and eat well and say my prayers, and I'm doing just fine. I exercise every day.
First stop, the tiny town of Newberry.
So I'm ready to roll, and what I worry about is people are not ready to roll, and we're going to drift.
An hour here, and then it's time to get back on the bus. You've had this strategy of going town to town in New Hampshire, just what you're doing today. We're on a bus in the middle of some small towns. Do you think that's paying off?
Yeah.
You seem to be getting warm receptions.
Well, you know, some of the, we don't like ignore anybody. We were in Dixville Notch, which is where there's like 8 voters, and I was there in the middle of a snowstorm.
No town too small, no voter overlooked. And he is rolling in more ways than one, picking up endorsements from 7 of the 8 papers in New Hampshire. And unexpectedly, the Boston Globe and the New York Times. Were you surprised by that, the Globe and the New York Times?
You know, I'm not surprised, but overwhelmed by it a little bit. So those are those iconic moments that you never forget when you're in public life. I mean, it's sort of like being in the Ohio State Band and dotting the I, okay?
Each time we get off the bus, there is a gaggle of reporters waiting for him. Sometimes from small-town newspapers, sometimes, like this day, from the Fox News Network. At each of the 3 town halls of the day, Kasich talks about his positive campaign. But sometimes the John Kasich that critics call snarky emerges, like when a voter criticizes his vote to close a New Hampshire military base.
But, sir, here's the thing. You think that I'm going to tell you that I'm going to suck up to you to get your vote when I know I'm pushing the debt up and taking stuff out of the hands of our men and women in the military? I'm not going to do that. You don't have to vote for me. Nobody has to.
Critics call him abrasive, but voters I talked to here found him refreshing. Have you made up your mind who you will vote for?
This helped tonight, very much. I'm leaning now towards John Kasich.
That's exactly the outcome the governor tells me he has to have from the town halls, from the thousands of miles he's logging on New Hampshire roads. What has to happen on Tuesday that will say to you, I'm in this race for the long haul, or this is time to...
Yeah, what's going to have to be, our people will sit down on the 10th, we'll know on the late at the 9th how we did. If we are a story, you know, in other words, you'll be covering it, but what does the national, what do the networks do? If all of a sudden I become one of the big stories, then, you know, we're in it for the long haul. And if, as I like to say, if we get smoked out here, then I'm coming home.
Now, I'll be back in New Hampshire on Tuesday for the primaries, and we'll bring you the latest, including primary results, on our special Ohio Votes webpage. Visit NBC4i.com and click on Ohio Votes under the News tab. And Ohio Governor John Kasich will reach his goal in New Hampshire tomorrow. It's not Election Day, but the day he holds his 100th town hall. He's convinced the intimate face-to-face question and answer sessions with New Hampshire voters will push him toward the top in the crowded Republican presidential primary. This week, I was the only Central Ohio reporter invited to join the governor on the campaign bus as he goes across the state telling his story to voters who will decide if he continues on the drive for the White House or takes a permanent ride back home.
So I would ask you to give me an opportunity to get to the rest of America, and you're the launching pad.
Governor Kasich hopes the voters of New Hampshire propel him toward the top. He's logged thousands of miles on this rolling campaign headquarters where we sat down to talk. He tells me he's calm. Why worry? Well, Donald Trump is at 38% in New Hampshire polls.
I don't think about Donald Trump. I think about me. It's sort of like when you play sports and you have somebody that breaks out to a big lead in a race. You just run your race.
Kasich is in second place in most New Hampshire polls, and that's where he wants to finish. But he knows it makes him a target.
You know, they're spending tons of money against me. Every campaign, you know, beating the living daylights out of our Buckeye.
The one day that I've been here, the ads that I have seen about you or against you.
Yeah.
How do you combat that, and does it make you fearful for what will happen in the next 7 days?
Colleen, let me just say this. If I become fearful, then I'm losing.
His strategy to win votes here is to roll through the state, sharing Ohio's story, even calling on me to back him up about his rocky first year.
I was the most unpopular governor in America because there was so much change coming, it unsettled people. Am I right, Colleen? And she put me on her television show in the first 6 months I was governor. And you know how they do news for 30 minutes? I was interviewed for 30 straight minutes. And it blew the ratings right up the top, through the roof.
He's selling himself as a successful reformer who turned things around in Ohio. But critics point out that he is an absentee governor. Have you been able to manage and run Ohio effectively from New Hampshire?
Yeah, well, you know, it's what cell phones are, and I've got a great team back home, and I get home from time to time, and but I'm on top of everything that's happening.
Kasich says 600 Ohioans have come to New Hampshire to work for his campaign. At heart, he is a Buckeye, but he wants to be a Buckeye in the White House.
I just want the people at home to know how deeply I've appreciated the fact that they have hung with me. I think in a way, maybe you tell me, but I kind of feel like they're like, he's our guy. Go, John, go. And it's made me feel really, really good.
We'll be in New Hampshire next week for the primary, bringing you live reports throughout the day. Keep up with all of our political coverage by going to NBC4i.com and clicking on Ohio Votes under the News tab.